Good morning to you, Lydia.
Good morning.
Mambo vipi?
Mzuri sana.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute tulienda ku-offload. Tukaongezea watu kwa dunia.
Au kusema bwana?
Hata kusema.
Yaani uliona hata hii tako haiwezi nunua hata pampers jamani.
Unaweza nunua tuko 1 year, we just turned 1 year this month. In fact, we had the birthday celebrations this weekend.
Oh, amazing.
So we thank God.
Hallelujah. Mwingine
angalia na mwana. Sasa ukiniambia kitu kama unasikia trauma.
Because of why?
Maybe give it time. Maybe I'll think after. So hey, let me tell you. Raising a child, working at the same time is not all that it's cut out to be.
Why?
I think we should. These people who came with this independent woman thing,
they should reconsider.
We should just be home raising babies or working. One of the two, not both.
You cannot do both.
You can.
Now since you have to have babies, then maybe you have to leave work. Which one is easier to leave?
I don't even know, but I think it's sometimes you can do both easily, sometimes not so much. I think also it depends with a particular child. Some are just a little easier, some are difficult. My firstborn was a little easier.
So huyu anasumbua kwa nini?
Huyu akona anataka kuona dunia. So he's difficult to control. He's a boy also. He's very adventurous. Yeah.
So the first one was a girl?
The first one was a girl.
Okay, hongera. Congratulations. Mwanaume ni kuzunguka na kuona dunia. Usifungia asione dunia. Kama
anataka kuenda kiendanga.
Competition ya dunia hata akoje.
Hata hataki chakula, anataka tu aende shule.
Maraoni.
Akae bila anything.
Which is a good thing. The ones who are clinky are a bit difficult to raise.
Yeah.
I want to believe so.
Yeah.
The ones who move around too much are very independent.
Yeah.
They can coexist.
Very independent.
Anyway. Lakini naipongezi sana na usiogope kuongeza. Unasikia maneno inaitwa tyranny of numbers. Iko mambo kidogo.
Tutaachia Mungu hiyo.
Sasa nimeona uko na mtungi ya 50 liters. What's going on? Ama ni mambo ya petition.
Nakwambia hii sasa tunatafuta maziwa. Unajua hii nini? Ukitafuta maziwa, you have to stay hydrated. Usipokunywa maziwa, you don't get milk. So this is how I walk around with a 3-liter mtungi of water.
Milk for where? Again?
See, for the baby.
Kwani jamaa anakula aje?
Wanatuambia ati lazima ati maziwa ya mama ndio mzuri ya immunity. So we have to just drag water all over the place so that we are never dehydrated.
So jamaa anamaliza hii lita yote?
Sasa hii ukikunywa hii ina convert into some, like half a liter of milk or something like that. So
nilifikiria inaenda direct iko hivyo.
Sasa inachanganyikana na mkate na ugali inakuwa maziwa.
Inakuwa balanced diet.
Inakuwa balanced.
It's good to see after a very long time.
Yeah, good to see you.
A lot has happened since you left us here.
Yeah.
And last we've also moved.
You've also moved. Yeah. What happened to your other place? This is bigger, I think.
Yeah, we are deciding a bigger space.
You're growing. Congratulations.
That is good. Yeah.
Now unajua ku survive is that period. And with a strong brand, you've had very good guests I've been following. Well done.
Asante sana. Bila nyinyi hatuko. Without you guys, we are never there. So
you've done very well.
Yeah, the guys who've made us up, who have made us up, and we keep growing because of you and the tacklers who join us every single morning. It's a win for all of us. The tacklers who come in and every other person who has been a support of us, for us, and the guests as well, who are always willing to come in and have a conversation. Ken Sam, I love you. I show a big man. Asante sana. Thank you so much. All right, this is the state of the nation. What do you think is the state of the nation that it is?
The state of this nation, Kenya, right now.
Kenya.
We're in a state of, I don't even know what to call it. Is it a state of anxiety and a bit of confusion? Because we started the 2022 election on a very good note. I think going into day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, everybody that you spoke to around that time said the same thing. This was the most transparent election that we have ever had. Okay. That this is, the IBC was well prepared, everything was conducted above board. The observers came out, I believe that was on Thursday, they said this election was top-notch. Very well done, very transparent. And then, around that time, it started becoming a bit clear that there was a winner, that somebody had won, and then the drama started.
Yeah.
Okay, and it started with people like Jeremiah Kioni saying that there was a lot of irregularities and problems in Mount Kenya. Interestingly, nobody said anything on voting day. Nobody said anything on the second day. Nobody said anything on the third day. It's just that now when the results are being confirmed, when now you start getting winners and losers, that's when now people start saying, oh, this thing was rigged. And we have moved from that to where we are today, where there is this whole assertion about a massively rigged election. And some of us are very confused about how we moved from the most transparent election in Kenya's history to massive rigging. It doesn't track.
It was too fast.
It doesn't track because if there were issues, we should have gotten them raised even during the day of voting. Usually when something is going really wrong, you will pick it up on the day of voting. You remember like when, I think, is it Rongai, when the Raymond, the son of Moy, is called Raymond Moy.
Yes, you remember Moy.
Yeah, when he was already agitated. And usually that's the kind of reaction you get. It's very spontaneous and it's instant. When things are going bad, you'll find aspirants, you'll find candidates at polling stations in the afternoon, raising issues, raising concerns. But these concerns did not emerge on voting day. They did not even emerge on the second day or even the third day. By the time the observers were giving their reports, everybody seemed to be okay with how the process was evolving until when it started to become clear that there was a winner. And then now the drama began, and which culminated, of course, in what you saw at Bomas, and then this Cherera's code, and they are very, I'd say, improper conduct. You know, as a person who works in public service, I can tell you that people don't always agree in the boardroom. There is always a push and shove between ministers and PSAs, between PSAs and heads of departments, between heads of departments and, directors. You know, those kinds of disagreements always happen. But, they were working with a timeline. And there needed to be a declaration. If they had something to dissent about in the boardroom, they could have put it on record in the minutes of their deliberations. And they would have said, you go and announce, but we would like to just have it noted and minuted, because this is what you'll say in a boardroom. Say, I would like it minuted, that I am not very clear how you arrived at a particular figure. I have a concern about this and about that. Instead, what do? They get into a vehicle, rush to Serena before the declaration is even made, without any sense of how Kenyans would react to their press statement. They just up and went and did this thing. And kudos to Kenyans, because they didn't react, with a lot of passion. But it could have gone either way.
Yes.
They couldn't have known or predicted Kenyans' reaction. We had been tense for all of 6-7 days waiting for this result, and then they preempted
the longest
with
way.
This conduct. And I thought that was improper, just from a public service perspective and how we know public servants are meant to act. And what they've done then is to bring a lot of attention on themselves and a lot of scrutiny. People wondering, why did you act in this manner? Why did you feel emboldened to behave in this kind of strange way as public officers who are supposed to serve without ill will, without favor? And that's when now you begin to start to, get this kind of information that, this person was sponsored to the commission by this person. And they're the ones who have exposed themselves in that manner. And therefore, by doing that, exposed the commission to that level of scrutiny of why would you behave that way.
The legitimacy of the commission.
Because they should be able to carry yourself as a commission and keep the public trust as an institution.
All right, so you're saying you have a problem with the commission and how they came out to speak what they spoke. But let's look at the issues that have been raised on this. I don't know, you looked at the petition, right? You've seen the petition. I've
seen, I think there are 9. Are there 9 petitions? Of course, there's a main one, which is filed by Raila Odinga and Martha Karua against the IBC. But then there is also all these other auxiliary petitions I think one that is filed, I believe, is it Jonathan? I don't know if it's a supporting affidavit or it's a petition by itself. There's one that is signed by, done by this young man, this organization that he runs, Youth Advocacy Africa. I think they have put in something, Okiom Tata. There's quite a number. Trying to track, what each of them is arguing, but what is coming out, emerging a bit more clearly, is that it's about mostly disputing the percentage of the win, to say that William Ruto did not garner the threshold of 50 plus 1.
Yes.
Okay,
That's the argument now.
That's one of the arguments. There's also quite an elaborate layout of something about hacking of the IEBC portal.
I said there were 56 guys who were
that there were 56 people. And Bitok, I'm happy to indulge anybody who is saying the IEBC portal was hacked. First of all, the IEBC said we've not been hacked. And true, because every time you went to that website, you never found it down, not once. That website did not glitch. It did not falter. Not in the day, not at night. And everybody from Russia to Mexico had access to it. So you can imagine that kind of a website, the kind of data that it was holding, it did not falter. But anyway, they're telling us that there's some hacking. I think there's also an argument around, is it the turnout numbers, and also the numbers to do with, I don't know, the presidential vote vis-a-vis the other positions, and they're being differentiated, kind of number, something of that nature. Well, I need to study them. A lot of these petitions, when you read them, because you're waiting to see that, that smoking gun. And I think it's the Nation that has written it as a smoking gun. I don't think it's a smoking gun, because when you tell me that 56 people hacked the IEBC portal, even if we were to grant you that argument and say, okay, maybe at some point after the first 48 hours, someone went in there, made some changes. Did they also hack the forms that came with the returning officers? Because the IBC did not count the forms that are on the portal.
Yes, on the server. They counted physical forms.
They did not even start counting. You remember they said, we cannot even count what's on the portal is for you, the public, for your consumption, that this is what our returning officers have taken record of at the polling station. But for us, we have to wait for the returning officers to arrive here. And you remember the first day when the first returning officer arrived at Bomas, I think it was either on Wednesday or Thursday. And that's when they started counting. And to count, they had the Form 34B with its supporting Form 34As.
Yes.
And they would take now those Form 34As to confirm two things. One, that the form is authentic, that it had all the security features that had been put in it by the people who printed it. And then the second thing is to confirm that the figures are properly tabulated in Form 34B. So once you confirm that this is a genuine form, it has all the features, so therefore then you take the number that is on there and you check that that is what is recorded on the Form 34B. And remember, it was a very painstaking effort. In fact, the first 24 constituencies were tabulated in 24 hours. It took.
I was there actually. The way they're using the laser light to light on the papers, it was a very painful process.
It was a very painful process.
Slowly. Yeah.
It was not a quick, rushed through thing. I believe all the commissioners were very much hands-on. Yeah. They were all walking around the Bomas floor, going that way, this way. Then once the figures are confirmed, then they announce. And we all watched it unfold. So I am yet to understand when Raila says that the forms were hacked on the IEBC portal. How do you then explain the original form? Who hacked that one? Is that one hacked too? This is not 2017, where the results were on a portal. Server, kwanza hii server by that haikuwa imefungwa, hata haikuwa na mlango. This server didn't have a door. It was a field.
Lakini wamesema ifunguliwa tena. Wamesema wanataka DC.
But it's a big one, like Nyayo State is just open. You just walk in there, take the numbers and tabulate. Now you're telling us the numbers are wrong. But what about the physical forms? Because this is what I would have expected. I would have expected, as the constituency per constituency is being confirmed, you're already raising the issue and saying, our numbers and the ones that the RO is coming with here are incorrect. This document that the returning officer has arrived with here at Bomas is not the one that our agent took a copy of at a particular polling station. That is how you would have begun to see this massive rigging that is now being asserted. We could not have started to hear it on Monday, on the day of the declaration. And what is becoming apparent is that on the day of the declaration, once it was clear there was a winner, then the claims of rigging. That's when the problem started.
But now also, Lydia, look at it this way, because we're also looking at the integrity of the election, of the electoral process.
Right.
If it is true then that there is a discrepancy between the forms that we have in our hands and the forms that we have on the portal, then should that not be a concern? Because then we are speaking about the credibility of an election.
It is true. Certainly, if there is a discrepancy between the form that was on the portal and the form that the returning officer arrived with, that should concern everybody. What I'm telling you is that throughout the verification process, the forms that arrived with the returning officer were identical with the forms that were on the portal. In the course of verification, at no point did any of the agents on either side tell us that the returning officers are arriving with forms that are inconsistent with the ones that they got at the polling station.
Oh, okay.
So that is what I want to say, that we should not, even as we pursue objectivity, we should not create false narratives so that we are seen to be objective. I would like to understand how it is possible for constituency number 1 up to constituency number 291 are confirmed, and there is no press conference. There is no principal agent, presidential agent who is saying we are no longer able to continue with this exercise because we have noted, because they're talking about massive rigging, that this entire thing, it's not legitimate. So my concern is that the timing of it doesn't seem to follow the narrative that is now being tracked. But yes, if there are constituencies, I would be happy to. I'm keeping a very open mind. I would like to be convinced of this issue. But I think it's truly, I don't know, unfortunate that people, because IBC has very many people working in IBC, thousands of officers. IBC is not Chebukati. When people talk about IBC, they just think they're talking about Chebukati. Chebukati did not travel to a particular polling station and conduct any election. It is really just very many public officials who have dedicated their time, who endured long hours, who endured bad weather, this cold that has been around, to help us arrive at a decision as Kenyans on who our leaders are going to be. And these are the people that you are now saying this entire thing they did was a sham. I think maybe when we are making certain assertions, then we need to be really sure that what we are saying is correct. I am not convinced. And I'm telling you that as a person who supported Azimio to the end, I am not convinced that somebody can tell us that they realized this massiveness of this rigging at the very last minute. We even had Jeremiah Kioni tell us now that this rigging was planned 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we didn't even have presidential candidates. We did not even have, we didn't even know who was going to run for office and who wasn't. So how was in fact, I don't even think we even had the CEO of IBC. I think he was recruited somewhere, sometime later. So now you tell us this thing was planned 4 years ago. Then I have to sit back and think and wonder, are we going through a Trump moment? You know how the Trumpers started this whole thing, and they really truly believed that something had gone wrong with the elections when it hadn't. And I feel like we are starting to see ghosts everywhere, and maybe being a bit paranoid about this and that. When you tell us that this thing was hacked by Denis Itumbi, I mean, it sounds like stories of ogres. And you don't even know where to hang, what to hang on to. I personally am yet to see something that convinces me that there was something wrong with Form 34A, the one that arrived with the returning officer, because that's the one you need to impeach. It's the one that came with the returning officers to the bombers of Kenya, not the one that is in the portal, because that was not what the IBC counted.
Okay. Before we get back, I would like us to get back to the forms again, and we'll get back to the forms on the errors that they're speaking about. Because I was there, we had a boot as well. We had a boot that we were using to, of course, to cover. We're also doing our own tallying here. So I'd like to make a comment on that, on especially on the discrepancy that they're speaking about, and what IBC was doing about it. But there's something that you mentioned as we almost wrapping your conversation, your support for Azimio. You were in Azimio. you're a strong supporter of Azimio. And actually, I called you because I knew you were supporting Azimio. I'm surprised
you wanted to be like,
I'm surprised that you have news here. I'm surprised that you have news here that could have the others, your Azimio people finishing you. What happened in Azimio? What went wrong?
Let me tell you.
First of all, do you believe Azimio lost this election?
I think Azimio could have done better. A lot better. Let's start with just the fact of how the campaigns were being conducted. There were a lot of concerns about certain gaps in coordination, how people were treating each other within the campaign, how people wanted to be a bit exclusionist, how funds were flowing or not flowing, how people were being treated, like such as the smaller parties, the ones that were brought into the family of Azimio. Okay. And you've seen some of that bad treatment is what has occasioned people like UDM, that party that has gone to Kenya Kwanza. Yes. Is because they endured such bad treatment that the minute this thing is over, they're just like, we want out of this relationship, you know. Yes. So there were those things that were not handled very well. Personally, I endured quite a bit of harassment because much as I was supporting Azimio, I have a friend, I have a friend who was running for governor in Nairobi, Sakaja Johnson. I think everybody who knows me knows that Sakaja is my friend from a long time ago, from campus. We're talking about over 1.5 decades of friendship. And so when I would comment in support of Sakaja on maybe my Facebook page, I would face such strong backlash and punitive action from Jubilee actors. And I would wonder I have made it very clear that I support Sakaja as an individual because he is my friend. But there was a lot of intolerance of that kind of objective or that kind of posture within the campaign. And I personally faced very stern and hostile action against me personally from Jubilee, the Jubilee campaign architecture. And of course, I wasn't happy about it. I don't want to get into the details of it, and the people who did it know what they did. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. This was a very complicated. It was a very complicated situation for a lot of people because
you'll have another gentleman called Kithaiga.
Yeah,
he said he should be coming.
Oh, Kithaiga.
You know, Manuel, another guy was here before. He was in Jubilee.
Oh, Kithaiga ule wa nini? Ule alikuwa NYC.
Yes.
Mimi, you see, this was complicated for some of us because we were one big happy family of Jubilee in 2017. So a lot of these people, when Jubilee split, and there's a whole battalion that went to UDA, a lot of our friends went to UDA. And in fact, for us as a generation, as younger people in Jubilee, all of the young people that we worked with in TNA, then in Jubilee, went to UDA. Okay, these are our friends, people like Martha Wangari, people like Jaguar, people like Kinabeja Dong. Those are people I've campaigned with literally on a day-to-day basis in 2017 for Uhuru Kenyatta. So it was very complicated for us, some of us, to be told, you are to not associate in any way.
They are not your friends anymore.
You should not talk to these people. You know, why are you talking to them? Why is your phone? You know, why are you talking to them? So a lot of us were living on WhatsApp calls. It is true, the way the deputy president was saying. We were living on WhatsApp calls. We were living on Signal and Telegram. But on Sakaja, just because of the importance of the position that he was running for, I was a bit public about my support for him. And the backlash was swift and intense. And we endured it, you know. And I think a lot of people were treated that way. There was that lack of understanding of the nuances of the relationships that people have at an interpersonal level. And yes, a lot of harassment, like I can tell you, when campaigns were happening, for instance, in Kirinyaga, because there was that much effort by people like, for instance, in the Ministry of Interior and because Martha Karua herself is from Kirinyaga, if they're planning to go to the ground the following day, today, they will spend the whole day collecting campaigners, UDA campaigners, and rounding them up and putting them in the police station. So that now by the time the Azimio team is landing in Kirinyaga the following day, you've already, all these people are not available to, are not out there in the public. And you see what that does.
And you guys never told us these things.
We couldn't say it because it would be seen to be the campaigning Azimio, which is also not what we wanted. And so what you're doing, you're radicalizing people. So people who are supporting you, people who didn't have a problem with you, begin to wonder, do I really want to be governed by you? Do I really want to live under this kind of administration or this kind of posture and this kind of approach for another 5 years? And a lot of people, the silent majority, even within, and I can tell you, even within the system that is called public service, even within the spaces of where Jubilee, you would think Jubilee has influence, there you would find, those few people who are just quietly wondering how they're going to stick it to you. Yeah, because they don't want to live like this for another 5 years. You saw the policeman who, when the election was declared, removed, stripped naked, removed his uniform because because there was that feeling. And it needs to be acknowledged. It's a real and it's a legitimate feeling. When people don't feel like they're free. You've seen also even within the community of Mount Kenya, Mount Kenya has a very strong, affiliation to the value of freedom. And when you look like you want to suppress them and suppress their voice and force something down their throat, that is the reaction you've seen, where almost as a block vote, they said, no, we are not going to accept your choice. We will make our own. And we are going to vote for William Ruto. So there were mistakes, unnecessary mistakes that were made along the way. Of course, there was a lot of bravado and bombast, that we could have done without. I think people are coming to a place of reckoning of the kind of mistakes that were done. And this is a thing that happened also even in Kiambaa. You remember in Kiambaa, everyone was like, oh, we're going to win this thing. And once it became apparent that the ground was shifting in favor of Jubilee during those campaigns, right around 3 weeks to that election, you began to see again the same kind of posture. People being pushed off, so that there is this sense of we just want to remain the 3 or the 4 of us, so that once this seat has been won, it will be very clear it is just me and Gerald and maybe him and the other person that delivered this seat. So you begin to see people being shoved, and that's something that Azimio did, where there was that sense of now, since this thing is almost, we are going to take it, we need to push people off. So that when the win comes, it will be clear that we are the ones who delivered it, and everybody else needs to be pushed aside. So there was of course that as well. So I know the people who know the mistakes that were done. They know the mistakes were done. Of course, everybody now knows that there was a problem with the agents. We talk. It is now an established fact that Azimio did not have agents everywhere, presidential agents. Even though they could have wanted to rely on the agents of, say, people who are running for MP. Unajua MP akisimama kiti tuseme amesimama mahali kama Mount Kenya. And then at around 4 o'clock, it's becoming very clear that people are not voting for them. Okay? Or at least by the time the first 100 votes are counted or the first 1,000, they're already knowing that this is not going to go my way. What do? They fall out. And so who is there to secure your vote? Okay? We know that on the first night of verification of votes at Bomas, the Jubilee agents the Azimio agents were not there. They didn't turn up. What were we doing? Okay. We were calling children, watoto wa shule campus at night, telling them, please, arakisheni, 2 a.m. Hurry. We pass them through somewhere, train them for 30 minutes, then dash them to Bomas to go and verify votes. I mean, the collapse of the agent operation was catastrophic. Absolutely. And I suspect that is why they couldn't be able to say which form, whether there was something wrong with the forms or there was not something wrong with the forms. Yeah, and I don't know who I saw wrote on Facebook yesterday that, you can, I think it's this lady of Roots, what's the name? The deputy of Wajakoya. What's her name? Justina. Justina said, you cannot complain that your maize has been stolen when you left the door of the store open. And I think when it comes to agents, the failure was catastrophic.
So is it that you didn't have agents, or what happened in between?
So, like what I have is, you see, what you have is information from here, there. When you put it together, you realize agents were either not recruited at all, or the ones that were recruited were not managed properly, either in terms of their allowances, so that they were not able to stay the course of the assignment. There's a place, I can tell you, there's a county where the person who was told to go and who was supposed to recruit the agents could not raise enough finances to do the preparations for those agents. Okay, like they're supposed to get some forms which are stamped by these commissioners of oath. I think it's supposed to be like some kind of oath of secrecy or something. Yes. And you don't have the resources to do that, and you ask for that kind of money. Nobody wants to give you, the resources. So what do? You abandon mission. So when you abandon mission, just basically you don't recruit. So people don't show. So there are no people to even show up for the work. So those failures happened, and they happened in so many places that it almost begins to look as though it was intentional, because everybody knows when you're running a campaign, the most important thing, hata heri uchukue tu pesa wacha kucampaign, ungoje tu siku ya mwisho uchague uweke agents. Agents are the bolt that holds at the end of a campaign. So to see that that particular part was bungled so badly, then you start to wonder, I mean, you have to work a little hard to be that incompetent, or to not to let that part of a campaign collapse. And so maybe the question that some of us need to ask is, was it intentional? Or was it incompetence? Because there's incompetence talk that borders on sabotage. Okay. And this one stinks. It smells like sabotage, because it cannot be. Jubilee is a party that has serious actors. Okay, this is a party that has run campaigns before. This is a party that delivered Uhuru to State House twice, originally being TNA. So these are people who know how to run a campaign. They know how to secure votes.
So who sabotaged it then? Because if you say
it, I cannot even give you a single name and tell you it is so and so, or it is so and so. They are the ones who know, because a lot of these operations, of course, were conducted very far and high above our heads. So it's not that I can tell you that it is Bito kama ni nani. Si ati tunajua. All we know is what we can see, and what we can see is that there was a failure at the end of the campaign to secure or to run this operation of agents. It was not because of want of money. It can't have been because of want of human resource. I think those were available. It can't have been for want of anything. And so then the question becomes, not that I know for sure, the question then becomes, was this incompetence intentional? Was it sabotage?
And okay, getting back to the forms, and then I think we'll come back to that on the strategy and all that. And also trying to wonder, because this is a campaign that it was almost clear where the administration was, where the deep state, quote unquote, was, where the government was.
It was clear.
So we'll get back to the strategy around it and one really wonder. But getting back to the forms. So while in Bomas, because we're also doing our own turning and observation.
Yeah.
Actually, the people who are very paranoid about being rigged out were UDA.
Yes.
The guys who are very paranoid about being rigged out and documents being messed up with were UDA guys. They are very paranoid. And the issues that were raised at first were raised by UDA to the IEBC. And they were saying, why is it that we're having this discrepancy and all that? And they said, if they're because you see, what you did, most arguments were coming in from the announcements. They're saying the commissioner said this, but this is how it is in the document. And though what the IBC was saying is not the difference that you're talking about, the errors that you're talking about, not them and tabulate them. Then you bring them to the back door, they look and compare with it. And I think the parties that are there made the submission that they could. And I remember at some point, there were complaints from UDA or Kenya Kwanza about harassment, first by police and also by Azimio guys who are there. There seems to have been some scuffle there at some point. Shola was almost being thrown out. The other time at night, we saw Chirchir being bundled in and the other guys who were in, laptops being taken from the UDA guys. So if the people are very paranoid about being rigged out, and I'm speaking from someone who was on the ground at that point, were UDA or Kenya Kwanza guys. They were very paranoid that, this thing was going to be rigged out. And they were very vigilant and they could pick up the errors that were there, especially on the announcements and all that, whether you have these friends and they could tally and say and take it. So the IBC were like, no, we don't have a problem. If you can pick clerical errors from what we are announcing and all that, bring them, then we look at them and tally together. Because there was no dispatch from Form 34A. Everything has had to go back there. So if you have a conflict, you take it back to that spot.
To 34A.
Yes. Go back to 34A and look at what is, what is the
reported there.
And UD as well invested, I think they invested in mobility. Like the officers moving around checking on the forms even before they come in. They're like, okay, what are our numbers? What are they looking like? And they could get their numbers at that point. So when you think about bombers, then is there a possibility, because these are issues that could have been raised at that point, the same way that Kenya Kwanza raised their issues at that point, that these are the problem that we're having, and maybe at some point they could get corrections in it, because there was nothing. It was like, okay, this is what you said, this is the error, let's look at the forms. Does it tally? Does it harmonize? Okay, let's look at the numbers. It wasn't anything outside, like invention or any creative. Is there a possibility then that these issues that we are raising in this petition could have been handled at bombers? And why was it not handled?
So that's the thing. Because that's what I'm trying to wrap my mind around. I'm trying to cut through the noise and ask myself, if there were errors on 34As that you're saying, somebody hijacked the dispatch of forms, inserted themselves somewhere in the middle of the KIMS kit and the public portal, and changed my numbers so that what you're seeing on the public portal is not what came from the ground. Isn't it?
Yes.
There was a way to check that.
Yeah.
And the way to check that was at Bomas when the returning officer arrived. So that if the returning officer arrives with a physical form that they have come with from the polling station, and the one they sent on the KIMS, someone hijacked and changed, okay?
Yes.
And you have viewers. All you had to do was present it and tell the returning officer, yo, Mr. or Mrs.
It's from my agent.
You are bringing this form, but the one I have from my agent is telling me something different. So what is this form? What are these numbers you've recorded on this form? Because that's not what mine is telling me. And that should have happened from the first returning officer, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. That is my question.
Okay.
Bitok. And we will have to wait to see how this hearing plays out so that we understand if these errors were noted, why they were not brought up at Bomas, why they were not resolved at Bomas, why the presidential agents and the clerks that were at Bomas for Azimio allowed the continuation of tabulation when these errors were ongoing. And there was this issue about, I don't know, some constituencies. I don't know whether there were 40 constituencies or something that had been left unannounced. And what happened is, it was noted that during this process of announcing, the commissioners were going and reading incorrect figures. That at one point, actually, one of the commissioners was on the podium reading a result, and the returning officer was still within the premises. And when they had what the commissioner had read out, they said, no. What you've just read is inaccurate. Look, my figures are different. So it is for that reason that that whole thing was stopped, so that they stopped reading the wrong figures. You remember, even there's a time there was an issue, I don't know, with 10,000 votes of Kiambu. I don't know, they were announced this way, but then there were some other way. But on the record, they were correct. It's just that the person who was reading at the podium read them wrong. So this announcement had become a another political thing, where someone is just getting on the podium, and for some strange reason that someone will have to explain to us, a commissioner was ending up reading figures that are inconsistent with what a returning officer had brought and what had been verified on the table at Bomas. Okay? So it is for that reason that these final ones were not read out. Because just as a mitigation to stop with the public mispronouncements and all that. So there was a reason for that, but it's not that they were not verified. Those 41 were also verified as painstakingly as all the others. In fact, our reports indicate that on the morning of Monday is when the last returning officer was processed. So it's not that they were not verified. It's just that this announcement had started becoming problematic because some announcements were just a bit inaccurate, and it stopped serving the purpose. Okay. And people were starting to get agitated about the numbers. Yeah.
You're a member of Azimio. A day before, was it 2 days before the announcement, you had a celebration party at KICC. On what were you basing it? Because they were saying victories already.
Talk me, did you see me at KICC?
Yeah, I don't know. I was not there, but I saw.
Let me tell you the truth.
So, and that raised the question is, were there, because the argument that came out yesterday was whether or not Azimio were tallying their numbers. Did you have a tallying center?
I do not know.
You don't know?
I do not know about the tallying center. The only thing I know is I tried at my own level to get access to the Azimio tally. Either as a link just to track how everything was going, or to physically just go and, usually I remember when we were doing like TNA, for example, in 2013, when IBC was doing their thing, we had our tallying center, we were there, physically actually, just following the numbers. And going in, going home, going back. It was a very open thing. You could just find the tallying center and go sit there. Okay? The same thing with Jubilee in 2017. So now the question was, okay, where is the Azimio tallying? Why can't we find it? Why is what is this? It had, what do you call it? It was like this confidential thing. So unajiambia, okay, labda ujafika unga ya kupewa clearance ya kuenda hiyo Azimio tallying center.
Lakini watu wenye wako unga mingi, ulisikia walifika huko.
Sasa tulijaribu, mimi nilijaribu kutafuta, lakini watu wanakuambia, this is the response, the standard response that I was receiving was, you just know that there are people who are counting. Okay? There are people who are counting, so you just relax. Wewe tulia, kuna watu wanahesabu kitu. Okay, sawa. But as of Thursday morning, every editor in this country, every producer knew the result. Because Form 34A was on the portal. And all these media houses had counted and counted and counted and counted. And once they were just at the edge of concluding, they all stopped. They all stopped the count. One day they'll tell us why. And so we all had to wait. But it's not like people did not know what the numbers were saying. It's not that people did not know. People knew. But there was still this thing within Azimio that, no, you wait. The forms as originally posted, that became the language. The forms as originally posted on the IBC portal have us winning. Okay? So everybody relax. So as originally posted, we are like, what does this originally posted mean? What does this mean? So tukangoja, and everybody was hopeful until the day at Bomas, you're seeing Ruto arriving at Bomas, and there's no movement at Raila's house. So you're like, okay. Is it that he's supposed to come last? Okay, then you wait. You're told, just wait. What is it? But we are watching. And Ruto is at Bomas, and where is Raila? And it was, those TVs, just, propaganda, just wait, relax. And I'm telling you, Azimio, the Azimio people were the most shocked human beings, because they learned at that moment, when Cherera went to Serena, that is when they knew something was...
Things are elephant.
Things are wrong. But the whole time, majority of your standard Azimio operative, your standard Azimio follower, knew that this thing was in favor of Raila Odinga. So that's another question of, whether that also was just people being managed or what that was about. It's also not very clear. Yeah.
So there was no tallying center, in your opinion?
In my opinion, there must have been a tallying center. It probably was not either to full capacity. Perhaps it might have collapsed. Perhaps it was not able to hold the data. Perhaps because of this issue of agents, there was nothing to work with except for the IBC results, the ones that are on the portal. So maybe the supporting infrastructure for that tallying center was not sufficient in terms of the data being generated. And perhaps it also may have suffered some kind of setback, like maybe crashing or something like that. I suspect that could have been something that could have happened, just because maybe not enough investment had been put to make sure that it is robust enough to accommodate the kind of data that was going to be passed on to it.
Okay. All right. Doro anauliza hapa, she's saying on Friday Chebukati demanded for ROs to drop the form to him and leave. Remember, was there an incident like that? Lydia. Look at an incident.
Unajua wakati Chebukati aliona it's taking a long time for the results to be verified. And he said that the returning officers who have been here for 3 days with their forms, and it's taking so long to process one returning officer. Because returning officer mmoja akikuja na zile forms zake 34B na 34A, they would do that whole thing. Check form by form by form, all those security features, check the figures, confirm, and then release one officer. Then the next one would come. So he said, let's reverse the process. Okay? Let's release the officer and be left with the paperwork. Then now, instead of taking from the returning officer one form after the other, we just take the forms and then now we check the forms after we have already received. So what he said is that they were reversing the process. Instead of releasing the returning officer at the end of the process, they were releasing the returning officer at the beginning of the process.
Once the returning officer submitted the forms,
yes, so they just like
then you can verify and release.
Yes, just submit the forms, then you release, then we verify. If there's a problem, we will refer back to the data, and if we need you, we will call you. And he made that announcement publicly, and I suspect it must have been after consultations with the chief agents, so that they could agree, how do we hasten our steps so that we're not caught up in terms of time. So that did happen, but it was a very public announcement. He made it on the floor of Bomas, and we did not pick up any distress from any of the agents. We did not pick up any protest as to those instructions from any of the agents. So our assumption was that it must have been done in good faith, and there must have been some kind of stakeholder endorsement of the course of action that he had taken.
Okay. Doro, who is also a member of Azimio, says there were 2 fully staffed tallying centers. 2 fully staffed tallying centers in Azimio.
For Azimio? Now, we don't have evidence.
Do you have the numbers?
Of the tallying centers?
From Azimio, yes.
I don't have. That's the other thing. It's what I cannot sit here, be talk and tell you that I know what we are asserting Raila got or did not get.
You're not aware.
I am not aware. So that's the other thing. So what is our number? Like, what's our number? Because you see, UDA walikuwa wanasema very clearly. Sisi Ruto akona hizi kura na tunajua hizi ndo zile kura akona nazo. Sisi kama watu wa Raila hatukuwa tunajua kura zake ni ngapi.
Two things. The prayers that Azimio are making. One of them is nullification of elections. First, nullify. Mesema hii kitu futilia mbali kwanza. Secondly, RERUN. Mesema if we're going for a RERUN, we don't want to see Chebukati anywhere. Now, the president cannot constitute a new commission. Now, Uhuru Kenyatta, he doesn't have the constitutional mandate to constitute a commission, an electoral commission. The president-elect William Ruto cannot do it because he's having a case right now. So, he's still an aspirant as it stands. So, who do you guys want to do the RERUN? Unataka nani afanye RERUN?
Unajua, there's this argument that temporary incumbency ya Uhuru Kenyatta ends the minute there's a nullification.
Okay.
So once it's nullified, it's like you're going back to default. And the default is nobody has voted, nothing has happened, and apparently he would have his full presidential powers. Okay. Within that window that could perhaps enable him to take a certain action against Chebukati, maybe institute the process of his removal, and maybe have then Cherera act as the chairperson. The problem now is that Cherera has shown her hand with the other 4 commissioners. So it will be impossible for UDA now to trust that the 4 can now run. If they had acted in a manner that I was suggesting, that they could have recorded their dissent in minutes and perhaps not just been so dramatic, it would have been possible for them to take over. Let's assume, for argument's sake, assume that this temporary incumbency terminates the minute the the election is nullified. And Uhuru is able in some way to remove Gulie and maybe Chebukati or whoever else. They would have been able to maintain a certain sense of credibility and trust. And UDA probably would have felt comfortable allowing and feeling that, okay, they can run this campaign. But now, because of their actions, even if you remove Chebukati, who are you going to leave to run the election? Is this Cherera, who is beyond biased, as can clearly be established? Because you can't run away from, you can't run from Bomas, fire on your tails, that things are so bad, something catastrophic has happened, and therefore you have to take immediate action. You run to Serena, but you have nothing to say. You just say opaque. And then you say, I will tell you more tomorrow. So what was so urgent? Why were you running to Serena to say nothing? And so something terrible has happened, so I need to address the media now. Even before Chebukati announces, I have to say something. Exactly. And then you go and say, everything went perfectly, everything was above board, the standards were high, until the last minute, it was opaque. The rest, I will tell you tomorrow, don't ask me questions, I beg. Okay? So who is going to trust you and your team to now run there? I have a real problem with how those 4 commissioners conducted themselves. Just from a perspective of just how public officers are supposed to conduct themselves, I feel that they could have done better, and they could have then enhanced their own credibility as public officials. They could have enhanced their own the public trust in themselves, and perhaps could have then been able to help us navigate this next phase. But right now, if you tell us that the 4 are supposed to be left to run perhaps the rerun or the next election, do you really think that Kenyans are going to trust that the 4 are objective? Nobody will buy that, and that will leave us in a bit of a quagmire.
Okay. That is the first prayer. Anyway, before you get to the other prayer, you are a public servant. The commissioners are public servants.
Yes.
What is the role of the commissioners?
The role of the commissioners
to the elections,
in regards to the elections, is to deliver a free, fair, credible, and verifiable election. Yes. Okay. And they don't do that directly. They do that through the commission secretariat, who they guide. Okay. They set the policies, and they say, this is how we are going to conduct our business. This is how we are going to manage our aspirants. This is how we are going to certify our candidates. This is how we are going to run our polling stations. This is the process we are going to follow. This is the business process for voter tabulation. This is the business process for voter transmission, for all that. So they set the policies, and then the secretariat executes those policies that the commissioners have set. And so the expectation is that if there is an issue that is to be addressed by IEBC as a corporate entity, then the commissioners would sit down as a corporate entity and record their dissent. This is what happens in boardrooms in every parastatal. Okay. People don't always agree, okay? But people sit in whatever parastatal boardroom, and they deliberate, and they record what they're recording, and they file the same. There's always something called a company secretary, for example, who takes a record of the dissent and the concerns that a particular person would have. And if that dissent then was recorded in that manner, when the petition comes, then you would be able to say, please refer to the minutes of this day, at this time, at Bomas of Kenya, at say 11 o'clock, when the Form 34C was placed before us. These were our deliberations, and this is what, therefore we cannot be found, if there's a problem with the results, we cannot be found personally liable because we raised that concern. I suspect that is how, you conduct the business of in a respectable manner within an institution. This thing of running to the media is not really a modus operandi of public service. It is not within any kind of expectation of the conduct of a public officer. Public service relies heavily on records, on paperwork. That is documented, that is signed, such things. And once it is signed and it's on record, there's no need to run around in the media. Remember, you also have you have a duty of care. You have a responsibility of care for Kenyans. There is no way, like I have said, they would have predicted how Kenyans would have reacted to the announcement they went to make at Serena. They made that announcement before Chebukati even made the announcement on who the presidential winner was. Actually, they're the ones who told us who the president-elect was, because they said that we don't support, and because people knew the biases now associated with these individuals, it became a bit clear.
You could tell already.
That the person was then not Raila Odinga. And so there was a way they could have done it and still being able to voice their concerns without putting themselves, their credibility, and the public trust in the institution of IEBC in jeopardy. What they did was akin to suicide bombing. You know, they suicide bombed the IEBC. For what reason? Because they should have let the entity of the IEBC stand the test of this time so that it could endure the moment. But now they have left the IEBC badly tattered, and I don't even know what the recourse could be if the election were to be dismissed and we were told to go back to the drawing board.
Right. So in that case, then, are we looking at a crisis? Are we looking at leadership crisis?
I think my trust is in the Supreme Court and those judges.
What's the prediction on that?
Yeah, because the judges are even though they act as judges and lawyers, they also are. They're a political court. We talk. They are also a political court, and they're acting within a context. So they cannot just make decisions without appreciating, okay, so what context are we in?
The consequences as well.
The consequences of that. You remember there are judges, for example, I think the one who said that the CASs were illegal, but did not necessarily instruct, that they should be immediately fired or removed from the payroll or something like, because then you appreciate, employment and contracts and those kinds of things. So a judge can find certain things, but make sure that they are appreciating the context. So I know that these judges are appreciating the context. So that's one thing in terms of them going the extreme way of telling us go back to the vote. They are going to be appreciating what the public, what is in public interest. And let me tell you, right now, the fight right now, Bitok, is for public perception. Okay. The fight is about public perception. Right. Is to sway public opinion in your favor. Okay. If you are Azimio or if you are Kenya Kwanza, you have to keep public opinion in your favor. So that then when the court is making a decision, when it is looking at what is in public interest,
the public is on your side.
The public is on your side. And you've seen Azimio have already, set out with their guns blazing, that, trying to now wrestle the perception that, Ruto is a diligent winner into, no, this person stole the vote. So changing now that public perception, and that's meant to create a kind of foundation or cushion for the Supreme Court to feel that they would be acting in the interest of the public by dismissing Ruto's win. On the other flip side, Kenya Kwanza would be pushing hard to sustain public perception in favor of a Kenya Kwanza win, so that now the Supreme Court would also feel by upholding the win, they would also be working in public. So both camps are going to work very, very hard to keep public opinion in their favor. But before we even get to now the realm of political consideration, the context for the Supreme Court, they are going to look at the evidence. Okay. They are going to look at the evidence. And like I mentioned, the Azimio team, the burden of proof is on Azimio to impeach Form 34A. Leave all the noise about hacking and I don't know what and numbers and they have to demonstrate to the Supreme Court that the Form 34A that the returning officers arrived with physically at the Bomas of Kenya
as discrepancies
was so monumentally flawed that those forms, a huge percentage of them, perhaps even more than 50% of those, were so monumentally flawed that there is no way that this election can be said to be the voice of the people, that the outcome cannot be trusted to be a record of the voices of the voice of the people. So that's what they have to. So it's not even just about impeaching one form or two forms, or even 10 forms or 100 forms.
It has to be significant.
It has to be so significant that you have to show that you see this entire thing needs to come crashing down. And that's how Maraga ruled the other time, that, because you did not even open the server, we don't know. It's like how an auditor tells you, I cannot see the laptop you're telling me you bought. So I cannot certify that the expenditure you incurred was correct, because I have nothing to work on. And so that's the level of proof that Azimio will need to present. The scope of it has to be profound enough for the Supreme Court to say, truly, this outcome does not reflect the voice of the people.
Without that, it would be difficult. All right. Bungala Majenchi ilikuwa zinabari 779-800-010 or 779-800-010 or 779-800-010. You can call in and contribute to the conversation this morning. It's the State of the Nation edition of the 23rd of August 2022. Now, tukona Lydia Mathia. Our good friend Arnold was in another media station. He said he was finishing and coming in. Kama kidogo amechelewa. So you can call in 779-800-010. Kama kawaida nambari ile 779-800-010. Bungala Majenchi ilikuwa wazi 779-800-010. Meanwhile, I'll be looking at the comments. Tuone ngono wanasema aje hapa. Looking at YouTube. Looking at YouTube. Murage Mugo. Wow. This Lydia. Okay. Murage Mugo says this Lydia. This Lydia is this Lydia is a bomb. Kevin Kiaria. After yesterday's call, this Doro lady cannot be trusted. Okay, interesting. Kenya graphics to Alexander Gideon Lebatron waiting for the conversation must have country logged in. MCTNA, good morning to you, Professor Mariba, loving the conversation live from Keroka. Asante Simon Kinyomo, good morning. Nico Said, Asante MCTNA, watching from Embu, big up man. Asante Isaac Chumba, good morning. Takol watching from Eldama Ravine. Dennis Kisoi watching from Machakos. Thank you. AK GB, Mr. Mariba anakuja. Hey, alikuwa sema ikumjane. Kisi kwa nini ajafika. Good show, brother. Asante. David Ngati, good morning. It is good to have the show on regular session. David Ngati, tunakuanga hapa kila siku saa moja unusu. You'll find us here. Carol Langat, very objective. Thank you. Prophet Duncan Juang, you was here last week on Wednesday, and it should be here again. Not on Friday. Thomas Ocheng, good morning, GB, following from Mugunja, Market Siaya County, Kenya. Sunday Political Channel. So if they didn't appoint their agents, whose fault would that be? Then the fault will be on them, because if you can remember, there was a ruling that was done by Ngugi, Justice Ngugi. I think I can read the ruling for you. Yeah, it was a ruling by Njoki S. Ndongo. And this is what I was saying. With the respect of the duties of party agents or representatives, Raila Amolo, this was in 2017, Raila Amolo Odinga and another independent, and IEBC, that's independent, versus independent Electoral and Binaries Commission, IEBC, in 2017. Four others, number 2 of 20th September 2017, where Njoki Ndongo, senior counsel opined, Supreme Court judge opined, once the Constitution gives citizens the right to vote, the freedom to choose, and conditions are created for the realization of that right, it is not the business of the court to aid the indolent. If party agents are required to be present, sign statutory forms, and undertake any other legitimate duty that is imposed upon them as part of the political process in an election, then they are under obligation to do it. To fail to do so is not only to fail one's party, but also to fail our democracy. The courts must frown upon any such inaction, reluctance, and delay. A candidate or an agent cannot abscond duty from a polling station and then ask the court to overturn the election because of a failure to sign a statutory form. Every party in an election needs to pull their own weight to ensure that the ideals in Article 86 are achieved, that we shall once and for all have simple, accurate, verifiable, and secure, accountable, transparent elections. That's a ruling in 2017. That is a ruling 20th September 2017, after of course, the elections that were disputed. Okay? Good morning. Bungala Manyanchi Jambo. Bungala Manyanchi Jambo.
Good morning, Bonabitok.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm very fine, thank you. My name is Kevin Mwenda.
Hey.
Umefanya vizuri. Lydia Mathia, she's a very articulative lady.
Thank you, sir.
Napenda kwanza niliona show ingine vile alikuwa naweka the differences with how UDA and Azimio alifanya their tally. Weka vizuri sana. I give it up to her. Hata yeye ndio alituonyesha vizuri. These guys were not prepared. And speaking about preparation, kuna hii kitu ningependa inquire from hata Veronica Maina kama UDA pia wamelipa agents. Kuna concerns tulisikia ni vizuri hata yeye umuulize. Unajua sasa hao wanaongea kuhusu bottom up, na unajua bottom up tunataka tukianza kuona walipe hao watu wako chini. So hata hao pia if it comes to arika na kitu kingine if at all agents hawajalipwa wanafaa kuwe na hiyo. Wanafaa kuwe na total foolproof evidence ya kwamba UDA agents wote Kenya mzima wamelipwa. Alafu another thing pia nilikuwa nataka niongeze.
Yes sir.
Hii mambo ya Supreme Court, Lydia amesema kuna faith ya kwamba the Supreme Court judges watafanya kazi nzuri. But unajua saa hizi state na system ni kama imeshika kila kitu. So I'm just hoping and praying that unajua watu kama Njoki Ndungu hao ni watu definitely ni kama huyo ni Cherera wa huko. We are just hoping that at least this time round she will be objective. Because if they are objective na waangalia evidence is brought forth na tuseme form 34A ndo zitasimama, I think hii kitu anafaa iendelee tu. Yani let the president elect William Ruto akue sworn in. Kwa sababu kusema ukweli Kenya imesimama, na ukiangalia vizuri biashara mingi zinasimama zikingojea outcome election.
Hata wale wazungu. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Nairobi, a place called Injil.
Okay. Wewe unaona kulikuwa na shida na uchaguzi?
Yo mimi hata naweza sema ilikuwa mzuri. Actually I voted at a place called Maseno University. Na naweza sema that election was so good. Yani kila kitu ilikuwa poa. The only people wenye walikuwa na shida, these people unajua wananga evidence. Hata Maraga wakati 2017 alifanya nullification, hakutumia evidence, alisema mambo na transmission. These people are never prepared to conduct an election. Unajua tena pesa yao mingi na malizikianga na watu wenye wako juu. Unasikia sijui akina Junet, akina nani, hao watu wako juu ndio wanakula pesa yao, badala wapatie watu wenye wako chini, wale ambao wana manage election. Alafu pia mambo hiyo management elections itilie mkazo, because the agents wa polling stations kusema ukweli they go through a lot. A lot, na kusimama kukaa bila kulala. You can even go 3 days without sleeping. Na uko hapo tu so that you alafu nakata kulipwa 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Ask yourself a question, akina Ruto, how much money will they pay these lawyers ambao wanaenda kufanya petitions? Si pesa mingi sana.
Yes.
But our lipi agents, I think once we do that, then unajua if another election is called, it will be very easy for the agents to go back to work again. So hiyo pamoja na hiyo na pamoja na kwamba kufurahia pia system ilishindwa, it's a very good thing kusikia the deep state was defeated. Na pia wewe kukupongeza, I took a screenshot of your results by the way nilipost kwa WhatsApp. I always follow you by the way.
Lena ilikuwa correct ama ilikuwa nje? Ilikuwa
correct tena sana.
Very good.
Ilikuwa tu difference ya 0.01. Na 0.0.
Lakini haikuwa pep.
Hiyo ilikuwa by the way congratulations. Hata wewe najua ulingangana.
Hatukulala bwana. Hata sasa nadai serikali usingizi.
Wewe hata unafaa for monetary compensation very big. Kwa sababu you are among the first to give us credible information about the results.
I appreciate.
So hata sisi tunashukuru. Uendelee na hiyo kazi nzuri. Leta hao wote, thank you for bringing Lydia on the board. Conversation yake inakuanga mzuri tena sana.
Asante.
Finally pia please remind Veronica about kulipa.
Ndamwandikia message sasa hivi.
Complaints zilitoka pande ya Homa Bay, pande ya Suba South.
Okay, watu wajalipo Homa Bay, Suba.
Na pia kila mahali
watu wa Moyale wanasema wajalipwa. Nani hapa Karayu wanasema watu wa Moyale wajalipwa agents. I'll drop a text to Veronica because she has been a guest here, so tamwambia watu wapiga simu wanasema wajalipwa.
Hiyo ni kweli. Najua we should set an example. As you do, we believe in the party, we believe in bottom up.
Sawa.
Nafuatilia.
Thank you so much brother for calling in and all the very best. Okay. Let's give wananchi bwana. Wanasema watu wa Maseno. Dan Mwangi. Okay. Mungala mwenye nchi jambo. Good morning.
Hello, hi Gerald.
Mambo vipi?
Morning. Fiti sana.
Naongea na nani?
So, my name is Mike. I'm following your conversation and I thought chip in.
Thank you, my brother.
Something on regarding the petition. And this has to do with the difference in votes that were put up in a table. I think in particular Kirinyaga County. There's 33,000 they've put as total.
Yes.
So Kirinyaga County, these guys are saying in Azimio that the governor got 23,000 votes less than what the presidential votes total brought in. So I have been checking out some of the data available, and you realize that there were 8 candidates which are contesting. However, when the announcement was being made, only 7 candidates got their results announced. This candidate that missed out was a Jubilee candidate. He was a former Senator, Charles Kibiro. The only data that you can get online has to do with Ndia County. And this comes to about 5,600. There are 4 constituencies in Kirinyaga. When you do a tally of these 4, that difference drops to about 1,000 votes. This particular guy should have been the agent for Azimio, but apparently he conceded early in the tally process. He probably did not have any other agent, and maybe that's why there's no follow-up on what he got. How many other situations do you think would be going through the same issue? As well as this also adds to the fact that Azimio was not ready with agents to protect their votes. I don't know what your listeners feel about this, and if any of them has any data for the other 3 constituencies, at least it can help to debunk one of these.
So you want to believe that there's some level of malpractice?
I don't want to preempt and say it's a level of malpractice, but from the returning officer, the one who announced the gubernatorial result, it was a lady, I can't remember her name. I don't think the name was mentioned. There is a video online where the actual announcement is done, and she states that there were 8 candidates, but then she runs with only 7.
So what happened with that? I remember there was a case like that as well for Kiambu. One case scenario as well was for Kiambu. And they were saying what the officers were announcing, somehow the results that the parties were getting from agents were different. And so IBC was telling them, tally, note down the errors that you are finding, then you bring them for us to harmonize them. So I think if the people raise them at the IBC, then for that point, there are a number of them from both sides. Even I remember UD had some complaints that they were bringing in, and also Azimio, but they were telling them, you give us the things that you've picked, the errors that you pick, then we can come and harmonize. So they go back to the document. They go back to Form 34A. And that's why the Form 34A is the basis of all of everything. So if we have any dispute, it goes back to Form 34A. So if you go again and find maybe there were errors, then in Form 34A, that's when you have a case. But there were many instances of these announcements.
No, this one is quite different. It has nothing to do with the presidential announcement. It is the gubernatorial one. So with the gubernatorial, the left one candidate's results make the presidential tally have higher figures.
Oh, yes. I get you. All right, I don't know. We'll try and frame that, we see. I'll try also and invite someone from IBC to come in, probably next week on Tuesday, so that we can put this conversation in perspective. There's also been an issue that has been raised in Oma Bay that, is it Milio Diambo? Yes, Milio Diambo. There's a little, but I think Milio Diambo was not running for governor.
No, it's Gladys Wanga apparently got more votes than the presidential.
Yeah, so there were these issues as well from Bodens. I'll need to get someone from IBC to help us bring this data into space. But if we have any complaints, I hope your candidate has complained or the candidate that felt was left out, so that we can have an official complaint that we can use to back up as well our pursuit for answers.
All right, fine. That would be awesome.
Asante. If you have anything else that you picked, please share it with us. Alafu, we ensure that we can put it into a very credible position.
Definitely, we'll do that.
Asante ndugu yangu.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. All right. Bunga la mwenye wa 779-800-010 wa 779-800-010 wa 779-800-010. Nambari ni wa 779-800-010. Mchango wako ni upi. I'll try and get someone from IBC next week, by the way, so that we can wrap up this conversation. Tusikie mambo ya kotini kwanza inaenda vipi, the filing, what happens, then we see what we can do. I'm seeing other days in. Masha Kodede, good morning.
Good morning, Gerald.
How are you, sir?
Good.
Good to hear from you. How are you?
I'm fine. Say hi to Lydia.
Lydia, unasalimiwa na Masha Kodede.
Jambo.
Yeah, I just have something I need to share. And this is on the conversation that is going on.
Yes.
You know, I feel as a country, if we are going to have a conversation around electoral justice and trying to do away with electoral malpractice, it is not possible to have the same conversation in the space where we are talking about, Azimio or Raila didn't have agent. Who said if I don't have agent, then it is a good certificate for me to be stolen? I mean, it is like we are accepting or we are saying in our laws and every other thing, it is accepted to be stolen from as long as you don't have agent. Why is IEBC there in the first place? So why are we having an IEBC agent and clerk? In one polling station, you will find like 3, 4, up to 7 from the queuing clerk to the presiding officers. So why am I supposed to be blamed that my votes have been stolen simply because I don't have an agent? I personally feel like if that is the conversation we are going to have as a country, then it is not supposed to be part of the conversation that is looking at electoral processes that are clear, that are credible, that is because we are simply saying stealing votes and other electoral malpractices are accepted at all. So it is your fault you don't have the agent. It is your fault you don't have strong people at home. I heard Maliba talking about this in your show, and it is being advanced. I heard Posholei talking about this on KTN. I've heard Dr. Duncan Ojuang, every other sympathizer of William Ruto talking about this. It means on their side, it is accepted across board that steal whatever you can steal as long as your opponent doesn't have it. If we go that route, it means poor people, the so-called bottom people, will never manage to go into an election and win because they will never have that kind of money. So I feel from my end that we will have to choose one conversation to have. Either to have a conversation where we have accepted all blunders, and so it is your fault, it is my fault, whether I have agent or you don't have. Or we choose a conversation on one end completely and say, how do we in Kenya have an election where all those 7 IBC clerks are part of the process and are making sure that my one vote is upheld from the polling station and delivered to the nation. Thank you. But I cannot have those two conversations that I go. It does not make sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Odede. Asante. Ana utembe. Odede, ameshaenda. Haya. Lydia, we have 15 minutes.
The IBC people are supposed to be there to make sure that everything has integrity despite and in spite of whether they are agents of people or not. That is what IBC does. That is the brief that IBC is supposed to carry. That for them, they just make sure that everybody's votes are collated the correct way. Every vote, that every person who comes to vote votes for the person that they intended to vote for. So they put a lot of architecture around making sure that is sacred. The reason why you need to have agents is so that if you're disputing to say you IEBC do not have the correct record of my vote, that you have evidence for it. Okay? So that when you dispute, It's not that you have agents because the thing will be stolen if you don't have agents. It is to say that in case you dispute what is recorded by IBC,
then you have alternative
then
evidence.
you have an evidence to say, my agent was there and they said something different.
Okay. All right. Arnold. Good morning.
Morning to you, how are you?
Salama, tumekungoja sana.
I just came to say the grace.
This is literally better late than never. You are almost never here.
I just came here to say the grace.
Well, Lord.
May the grace of our Lord, and then we finish up. So far, how are you guys?
Well, we're just wrapping up.
Yeah.
Tulikuwa nafunga kiosk na the way we were just finished doing the bunge.
Yeah.
And Lydia was executing an answer, a response to Odede.
Odede did up. I remember he did a post yesterday. I love Meshach because Meshach is an adept follower of this particular show, and he also shows up here as a panelist.
Yes.
Good thing is that it enriches the show in that he sits
jurisprudence
here.
of the show.
Yeah, it deepens the jurisprudence of the show. Also gives it the dynamics and expands its limits, which is actually okay. We are doing a political process. We are going through a political process, and all of us have got our Article 38 rights. So we have got the right to stand where we feel safe, at least politically, and we get going. I know you guys have gone through the petitions and everything else.
Have you gone through the petitions? No.
I got all the documents last night from a lawyer friend, but I wasn't able to look at all of them. I only was able to look at Omtata's petition.
Does it make sense? Did you figure out what is right? I tried to make sense of it.
Actually, for me, Omtata's, there are two petitions that I think have got more weight. One that is by a guy called ARNOLD MALIBA, and then the other one by Omtata. Omtata, I think, being a veteran of the Supreme Court and the courts, has actually learned how to become very surgical. He's pursuing a quantitative approach to the case, a very easy one. Because if you look at the prayers...
He's making one argument only.
Yes.
But he's basing it on voter turnout. It's
actually quantitative. He's gone quantitative, and that is an easy one. He's chasing a target he sees. But if you look at the Azimio... The main Azimio, let's not call it a main because it's the court that will decide which one is main and which is not. But the Azimio petition is actually a cocktail of very many things. They are throwing everything on the wall and hoping that something will stick. Yeah, so that's the approach. But I think the most dangerous petition for me is actually Omtata's petition, followed by Arnold Ochieng's. And then, of course, third is Azimio's because... they have been shy to actually just go out on Article Section 80 of the Elections Act vis-a-vis 140 of the Constitution. Of course, the two of them coming against each other, and then, of course, looking at which one is weightier. So it could be too early for us to judge how the petitions will turn out, but we can tell where it's going. I think... anyone with a quantitative case, since the last case, the last ruling was qualitative with Maraga, I think that this particular time we could easily go quantitative because a lot of qualitative issues were taken care of because IBC was using the last ruling, just ticking boxes as they move down. So I think any ruling that can actually shift the dynamics of this election has to be quantitative. Okay. So looking at the numbers and stuff, unfortunately for Article 140, it gives the Supreme Court only two options, either nullify or uphold. Okay. But now these are the guys I've seen Azimio have sneaked in Section 8 of the Elections Act that gives a court of law the power to declare somebody. Yeah, so they've got a cocktail of very many things. I don't know how that turns out, but I do not still feel that we have got a threshold that is sufficient for us to probably change the fate of this particular election. Also, it's important to actually tell the Supreme Court to choose the Republic. It's important that they choose the nation. They are a political court. Yes. This is what I know. That whatever way they rule, for one of those actors, it will not change the course of the elections. Using 2017 as an example, if the Supreme Court rules against Azimio's petition, they will say the Supreme Court was bribed. It was pocketed and everything else. You can literally tell that is where they will go. If the Supreme Court gives them the go-ahead for a rerun, I foresee a situation where ODM will ensure that we don't have elections if we listen to them or cause a stalemate, because already the prayers they are making are actually very difficult. It is impossible for us to have a new IEBC under 90 days, yet the constitutional timelines for a rerun is only 60 days. It is also not possible to do a forensic audit within that particular time frame, look at the procurement, do fresh procurement and everything else within 60 days, and have a ready-to-go commission. So it's going to take a bit of time, and I think that's where they want to lead us. They want to lead us to another BBI scenario, and the BBI scenario is just a handshake scenario. So whatever way it goes, I can tell you 100%. You can actually draw and say this is how they will actually. It's predictable. They will want to actually just push us into a constitutional conundrum. We stay there and we don't move on. So if I were arguing before a court of law, I would actually ask the Supreme Court to actually just uphold this particular election, so that we get moving as a republic, because we've been around this mountain for too long. We were here in 2013, we were there in 2017, we are now here again. Not that that particular option is a wrong one, but it's our coping mechanism, it's the way we heal. Because this election was for Azimio to lose. They actually were able to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. It's a very difficult thing to actually, to come to terms with. They had this thing, literally everything. They were backed with everything except themselves.
This is what I was saying somewhere, and people don't want to hear the truth. You have the head of state, commander-in-chief, and I don't know what of the defense forces. Okay?
Yes.
You have government assets at your disposal. You have government personnel at your disposal. I mean, you saw people like Kibicho coming out guns blazing saying we support Azimio. It is our right. People like Matiani. So you have the staff, you have the assets, you have the vehicles, you have the choppers, you have everything. Okay?
Yes.
You have resources. Enough money to soak up the Indian Ocean. On top of that, you have pollsters, all bought, singing your tune. Mpaka wana summarize findings zao zote waneka kwa billboard. And then a beautiful big fat cherry on top called the media. You have the entire of mainstream media and a battalion of social media operatives on payroll to advance your cause. Make it make sense. Make it make sense to me that you're the underdog. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense to me.
So probably, I know I'm late, so I just need to allow you guys to finish so that I remain here with these other guys. We do our own recording and move on.
There was the issue of agents that was being raised by Odede.
Yes.
And I think Lydia was speaking into that as well. And Odede is saying it's not the responsibility of the parties to deliver a credible election. It's the responsibility of the IEBC, whether or not we have agents.
You see, and Njoki actually argued, I think in 2017, very well, that if you do not have an agent in a polling station,
then you come and tell someone
you
to nullify.
therefore cannot come to the court and tell them that because I did not have an agent at the polling station, I cannot trust these results. So, as in that is oxymoronic in that you do not want to believe the results because your agent wasn't there. They didn't sign against it, they weren't there, and therefore you ask the court to nullify these results because you did not have an agent and that it was. So IEBC cannot be both.
You don't send them again.
IEBC cannot be the judge and the watchman at the same time. They can't do both sides. They will do their bit. If you have got an issue with them, it's for you to actually come back and ensure that it works out. You see, we cannot excuse such incompetencies. I said here, and I think the statement I said earlier on, is that from what Lydia has just said, ODM managed to actually snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They had everything backing them: the wind, the weather, government, God, everything. Even the devil was supporting Azimio to win this election, except themselves. They are the only ones who didn't believe or were not ready to actually win this thing. Otherwise, everyone knew Actually, even the people on the other side knew that was they were actually going to win this election.
Actually, people were saying, hata Ruto akishinda hiki tu watampatia kweli.
And they actually
there was almost an acceptance that in case
they
even
had
Ruto
decided
is
to
smart, that was that acceptance of his supporters that hata akishinda na waichukue, they would have kind of accepted and moved on. Because they knew there's no way he would have. System, I easily lose.
You know why? Because I think that this Supreme Court process is actually a waste of time in this particular process. Is that you can actually tell what will happen after the Supreme Court. There are some prayers that have been made. You see, Raila spoke yesterday and he said that he's going to court so that he demonstrates that he's a believer in constitutionalism and that he hopes justice will actually prevail. And of course, out of justice then shall arise peace. But then we know that in 2013, when the Mutunga court ruled against him, he called them Koti Bandia. In 2017, even when the court gave him a favorable ruling, he refused to go to a rerun. He made some extrajudicial demands. When I call them extrajudicial, is that they were not part and parcel of what they asked, but he went on to ask. This time around, they've actually included those asks in their petition. Some of those asks are difficult to meet within that time frame, but do you think they don't know? They know very well. But they just want to ensure that if the court was to grant those asks as they have actually been presented, I tell you, we will not have an election. So if you listen to them and what they are pitching, is simply to ensure that we are in a stalemate. And that is why, for me, I will actually, since the Supreme Court is actually a political court, ask them to choose the nation over the players. Because we are going to be around this mountain for very long. We will not get around this for 40 years. As in, we also have got our version of 40 years around this particular mountain.
Maliba, and this thing you said is what I think this generation of politicians, okay, they need to go.
Yeah.
We need to kufagia wote bitoka. Because they hold this country in trust of us, and we need to hold it in trust of our children.
We are the people.
They are destroying our country as they jostle for power, which they know they've lost. They are playing games. Okay? This thing of even this Kinacherera and squad, it was just a trump card. They were just wanted to hold the process hostage so that there's no declaration. Everybody knows that. But now they're here telling us that now it's supposed to have force of law, that these people are not there. What do you make of this John Gedongo affidavit?
By the way, you see,
it's a movie.
Let me just say this as I close. That if you've looked at some of those affidavits, first of all, there's too much of a mix. I'll tell you one. Publicly, Azimio has said that they won this election with over 1 million votes.
But on the petition?
They have read numbers. But on the petition, they are talking about William Ruto being on top, but he lost the threshold of 50% plus one with a mere 441. So, but they are not just playing at the Supreme Court. For the petition, they are playing both in the Court of Public Opinion and the Supreme Court. So they tell the people a different set of truth, and then they go to court and then moderate it. Where they know they will be cross-examined, they actually come to something that all of us think probably could be closer to the truth. And that is why, for me, I think only Omtata and that guy called Arnold are chasing something. They are going the quantitative route, because largely on the qualitative end, that was taken care of. I don't want to talk about the commissioners, because I think I've said enough about them. Also, we would want to know the commission is actually, the thinking of the commission is that it reasons and works in unitary. It is one. Therefore, I do not, I hope that the court will also address itself on that issue, where we do not get to a place where commissioners are testifying against themselves, because they have sabotaged the process. Like Lydia was talking about, when they were trying to buy time and everything else, they were sabotaging the work they're supposed to do. So that I don't want to talk about that so much, but it's going to be a very interesting case in that for the first time we see commissioners who now have taken the eye in IBC to be silent. Because once a commissioner takes side on the other side, then he is no longer impartial, he is no longer independent. They have taken sides. So even if we were to look at the spirit that informed they are going to sit down with one participant, to come up with one petition, to swear affidavit in support of those particular people. As in, are they doing it as individuals or as commissioners? Two, whatever Chebukati did, there is law to support everything he did thus far. there is so much, of course, misinformation out here. You look at the petitions and you look at what they say publicly, they are worlds apart. So there's so much to go about this. But we are in for good English, big Latin, emotional orations and poetry. So as a nation, we have got a national law festival going on, or a law symposium. We should also be looking forward to it.
Our very own drama.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, I hope PLO is in online this time.
PLO Lumumba.
I hope he's part of it. I want to hear about you being given an opportunity to strangle the baby.
I don't know why PLO. Why does PLO not play in this league? He seems to fade when it comes to these petitions. He should stand with the people, even just as an amicus. Because I find he's brilliant.
Because law is quite a field, and not everybody is into litigation. Others are into conveyancing. Others
But he's a
academia.
litigating lawyer.
He does, yes, but
he did litigation.
He probably doesn't find our way of
litigation,
prosecuting cases really interesting to his principles.
His palate is not.
Or maybe he finds our issues petty.
Yeah,
not really.
I think he should file a brief as an amicus, because he tends to cut through the noise.
A lot of people are going to be enjoying this particular case in that they will be, a lot of people who have been mentioned, they'll end up applying to become respondents. Because I think what we're going to see in the next 24 hours, after everybody has filed their responses, then there are these people who've been mentioned left, right, and center, the Itumbis of this world. We live in a world of deep fake. So videos and everything else, there's going to be a lot of audio. They are taking a lot of trash to the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court is not a criminal court. And some of these things will actually be sent elsewhere. Of course, as they consolidate, after 48 hours, I think we will see the Supreme Court attempt to consolidate all the cases, see what can actually be administered, because 14 days is just a very small. This is not a trial case where you are a trial court where we are going to have guys looking at who said what.
Shocked to see a prayer by Azimio saying that they want the Supreme Court to instruct or to allow the DCI to investigate a laptop that was, I think, grabbed from an agent. And I'm like, my God, where do we even start with the issues of lawful acquisition of evidence?
After all of them were given access into the system.
Where do you start?
And all of them were given observer status into the system. So just the way you see them printing out the guys who've been there, you can also print out their side of access. But you see, because they are playing, like I've said, you cannot run an election purely on propaganda. And there's a lot of misinformation.
The end of Azimio's sword has been bloggers and, let's not say the others.
Everything they said. When they said that Kindiki had refused to sign, that it's Kenya Kwanza's agent who had refused to sign.
And it's them who had refused to sign.
The truth is actually that it is their agent who had refused to sign. So literally everything they have been saying is actually the other way around. When they say that they are on top, when they go to court, they say this other guy was on top, but he didn't meet the threshold.
President Uhuru Kenyatta might be in power for 2 extra years. With Chebukati unfit to hold office, we might have a transition committee assisting the president to run the government as we solve the anomalies. But let me tell you, do they know the meaning of the word revolution? Because that's what we will be attracting with this kind of advancement.
Somebody needs to tell the president this, wherever he is, that from all the noises we are seeing, when you ask cui bono, who benefits out of this confusion, then it's pointing at him. And that the claims that he has tried to actually have a third term through other means, either by ensuring that he stays in power, quote unquote, through a transition process, or by then having a puppet, is actually coming true, or rather is actually being proved almost true, because he needs to bring in order as the head of state. He did not relinquish that. That is a constitutionally given role that he cannot run away from. The chairmanship of Azimio is something he gave himself, but being the head of state is something he was given by the constitution. So at this particular level, he should be giving our nation direction. He has denied us direction as a nation. As the leader of the family, he has kept quiet because he chose to be partisan. Being the chairman of Azimio means that if he actually congratulates William Ruto, he will actually have conceded on behalf of his coalition. So out of pragmatics and optics, he's chosen to stay away. But is the constitution superior to his choices? I say yes, because even though the president has got his Article 38 rights to choose the friends he wants to deal with, he cannot, there's a reason why even in BBI they say he cannot act like mwananchi wa kawaida. He cannot initiate a process, a people-led process, because he's the head of state. So somehow...
Actually, it's creating such a quagmire, for example, for the disciplined forces. I mean, who are they supposed to be loyal to? You know, there's a president-elect here, and you have a head of state who has not even done that ceremony.
But the good thing
he was supposed to do with
the good thing is this, that all that is required for a president to take over is the swearing in. We will just need the Chief Justice and the registrar. They can do it even on a street.
But you know, in the meantime, he is the one who is the custodian of all the election materials, because they are under guard by who?
Yes.
Of course, but at the moment, we are within.
They are under guard. We are within his realm.
Temporary incumbency at the moment, even though you've seen him try to throw around weight by appointing people and backdating it. He's communicating two things. The common mwananchi will not know that he has backdated. They will just say he still has got authority. He needs to be the head of state. He needs to choose leadership. If he really truly loves this country, he needs to relinquish the chairmanship of Azimio to somebody else, so that then he takes on the act of being the head of state. But the eating humble pie does not reduce him. He's a man who's lost elections before. Not once, not twice.
He's watching weight. Why don't him to eat the pie?
He should actually just relinquish that particular bit, even if it's temporarily, so that he acts
as a president,
as the head of state. You know why? Because at the moment, we actually have been left in limbo as a nation. And as much as we want to pretend that we don't care about him, we really care, because he is still the head of state. Even as an incumbent president, he is still the head of state. He needs to do the honorable thing. Give somebody else, even if it's to call me and just give me the chairmanship of Azimio, I wouldn't mind, just for a few weeks. Of course, nitanyorosha hiyo place kabisa, because there's a lot of nonsense around that place. Nitanyorosha, and if there's a reason,
hawezi kubali huko karibia hapa sasa.
I know what sasa hizi unajua nimeitwa.
You are smelling like
nimeitwa mall na kila kitu.
Wacha nikwambia watu vile wanasema ukiongea ukweli. Let me tell you, we will not apologize for incompetence. You know, there comes a time when you also say you don't want to be painted with the same brush strokes.
Yeah.
If we were partakers in this campaign, we would be able to defend it. But now everything that was supposed to be done was not done.
So
Sasa they're supposed to come and defend incompetence.
Left me to be in charge of Azimio just for 2 weeks, and there is a rerun, we will win this election. But I know they can't allow me closer to that thing, because they think by saying the truth, you know, this idea of people not liking the truth is why we
cold water.
But the truth is that Azimio needs
that's
cleaning.
the thing. Let me tell you,
they need cleaning.
The team in Azimio did not want to hear the truth. If you dared, even in boardrooms where it's not public, you dare to just say the truth, the kind of revolt, they would brand you and say you're a UDA sympathizer, and they would excommunicate you from their meetings, because they were allergic to the truth. They just wanted people who were saying affirmative and positive things to them, and anything that was even remotely not celebrating the whatever shenanigans were happening would be branded as wewe ni UDA mall, wewe ni UDA sympathizer, alafu sasa wanaku ostracize. And for some of us, I mean, there's a part of us that's just like, we told you so. We told you so.
And when you say that, they tell you this is the wrong timing. The wrong timing when we are going into a rerun, really. There's a possibility that we're going to a rerun. We cannot go to a rerun. Just the same way Baba says that he cannot go to a rerun with the Chebukati. We also cannot go to a rerun. Azimio cannot go to a rerun with the same team of the people who took us to this mess. There must be house cleaning. If they don't do that, by the way, we will end up with the same results, and then we will kill our people with a lot of mourning. People are so disturbed out here. Tumeshinda hatujashinda. There is hope. Sasa jana walileta trailer mzima ya hope.
Lorry one.
And now inside it was empty.
But you see that lorry.
Did you see when it was opened? It was empty.
It's a truckload.
It had 3 boxes inside. They could have come with a wheelbarrow.
It's a truckload of hope. But we all know that hope is not a strategy. And you know, that truck you saw is actually just fresh tears loading. It's been presented as hope. But properly, after 14 days, you will see fresh tears coming out of that lorry. You will just realize. So, If we cannot go to elections with Chebukati and his team, we cannot go back to a rerun with the same team in Azimio that snatched victory from the jaws, or rather snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. We can't go back that way. Anyway, this is the difficult conversation, leader, we need to have. Do you know that all this noise we are having is actually a generational handover? It's difficult.
Okay. It's a birthing process.
It's a birthing process. We are coming to birth. And we must actually realize that we are at a watershed moment as a country. The millennials must stop thinking that they are the young people of this country and know that they are the people of this country. Because Generation Zers behind you are actually active. There are already a number of them are adults. Millennials now, you are the people of this country. The highest number of voters in this particular election were millennials. Sasa nyinyi sio vijana wa
I told people, you keep saying that youth are not many. There's a group of people you're missing.
Yes.
The older millennials, they watawapiga kiboko.
So it's now a birthing process. Millennials are now the majority in the parliament. Millennials are the majority in county assemblies. Almost half the governors are millennials. So you are no longer the young people of this country. You are the people of this country. And even as we weep for Raila, I will actually tell you, I will repeat Raila's word. Do not weep for him. He said, do not weep for me. Weep for your children. Actually, in this particular election, we need to tell millennials, stop pretending like you are weeping for Raila's loss. Weep for yourselves, because you are not prepared to take over the country. You are still pointing fingers elsewhere. You act like a people who do not know where you are going. This is a watershed moment, and if you slip through the revolution, you'll just realize some other people have run away with this thing. I have always said that we millennials could be the only generation that does not have a president. Kama hatujipangi.
Sisi jipanga.
Yeah.
Tusikie nani amekuja hapa mbia amesema nimfungulie tu kidogo. Mfungulie kidogo. Dogo aseme kitu. Mso.
Yay.
Mambo?
Poa sana, how are you?
Salama sana, karibu.
You know, I'm so obsessed with Arnold Maliba lately. He is spewing wisdom beyond measure.
I hope Mama is not listening.
Oh, okay.
You're breaking though. You're breaking,
Yes, so Arnold has been saying all those things that everybody in ODM wants to say, but they do not have the courage to.
Lydia pia amekuja na ubaya.
Lydia ndivyo amekuja akiwa moto. But naangalia Arnold nasema ati walai Arnold apewe extra security kwa sababu anasema ile ukweli ilianza 2013.
Nimemwandikia security mrefu hapa sana.
Walai tena kuna watu wanatumia baba vibaya, wanapata viti vyao kisha wanampatia information ambayo sio. Then wana make a believe that kuna vile kunaweza kuwa na hasiwezi.
Okay.
Because right now the argument is we should use the spoil to vote. If we haven't used spoil to vote in the last two election cycles, like really, why are we manipulating this guy? He's 77 years old. Then I told you my dad is around that age and he's able to, I know how it is when he's there. He's being manipulated. Why are they doing this to Raila? I do agree with Arnold that it's about time we agree that Raila's age was the 90s. Beyond the 90s and the early 2000s, that is where was totally done for, and he should be awarded the position of a statesman and given state security and state spoils, and we should stop manipulating him and using him for our political endeavors. That is what the guys in Azimio have been doing.
Okay.
They know he is not going to rise to top job. They know that at this point where we are at, even the case we have in court, in fact, if you look at the case that Moses Kuria has filed against Ole Kanchori and Ole Damu, Ole Kina, sorry. Now, it means that indeed, even if the court has something to do, they also have a case to ask about sorting chaos and subverting the will of the people and subverting the constitutional situation. Like that was a constitutional duty that Chebukati was doing, and those people tried to subvert both. So even if we have a case, even if indeed they have some anomalies that happened with the election, I do agree with Arnold and say that indeed so far we are so messed, and the whole situation is in such tumble that we cannot be able to decipher A from B.
Okay.
So my point is, where we are at, can't we just bring people together? Agree that the Raila of 1992 is no longer there. Not that he's gone. Yes, he's there, but he's there as a fifth person to bring unity to people and also to groom leaders that are going to take for him. Like he was from the 70s up to the 2022. He needs to groom Akina, and I'm saying this and Akina, the likes of Babu, those small bad boys. He needs to groom them and give them the Raila that they can be able to see him in a different way, in a modern way. Let's try to push that 77-year-old guy. And I'm saying 77 people, they're not guys for those years. So he's probably 90 or 85.
Okay.
Yeah. So my point is we need to be very careful when we are subjecting our senior citizens to do our political bidding and we are torturing them, yet we know really there is no beginning or end to all of this. So I do agree with you, yes, studio, and I'm really tuning and I'm listening and be sure that a whole lot of people can across the political divide are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andy. Well, so, ameongea amesema yake. Haya, you guys are securing something tukienda nyumbani. Lydia.
Yeah.
Asante.
Masaa ya kwenda nyumbani imefika. I think we wait and see how the arguments will play out in court. Two important things I'd like to reinforce. One is that the next 14 days, as the battle is playing out at the Supreme Court, it cannot be lost to the parties in this matter, i.e. Azimio, i.e. Kenya Kwanza.
Is it
that
Azimio
this is
Azimio?
Azimio.
Okay.
That this is going to be a fight for favorable public opinion. Okay? So you cannot afford for accusations being hurled at you in public and then you keep quiet and say, let us wait for the Supreme Court, because you will be losing the public perception battle. So, like I said, Azimio is already out here, guns blazing, fighting for the public opinion to sway in its favor. Then Kenya Kwanza needs to swing into action and make sure that they also don't lose their public perception battle, even as the legal battle continues in court. And then two is about the judges of the Supreme Court. Of course, there is that sense that people have that that court is already, skewed in a certain way. And politically, I think the call for them is to really rise above the pettiness, to really look at what is in front of them in terms of evidence, to keep an open mind and to choose Kenya above everything. Because if we get into this quagmire that they want us to get into, where they have nullified the presidential election, and then nobody trusts the IBC to do anything for anybody, then we are going to leave this matter in the hands of the people. If the people feel like they cannot trust their institutions, they cannot trust the judiciary, or a lot of our public institutions have been battered. It's not the police, it's not the DCI, it's not now IBC. If the judiciary falls on that same sword, if it falls on the same mountain, then the people will feel as though they have nowhere to go except to rely upon themselves. And those begin to be the makings of a revolution that nobody can tame. We're already dealing with a surging hustler nation. And you have seen that they have spoken very loudly in this election. We do not want to give them fodder or to leave room where their passions cannot be managed. So I think I would be very cautious. I would tread very cautiously for the Supreme Court not to indulge, outlier agendas and to simply deliver justice and to choose the country above everything.
To the people. Okay, so it's about the people. It's not about the politicians. Justice for the people. All right. I don't know where the people are now in this case. Because every other person is saying they're there for the people.
They're the people.
So I'm wondering.
You saw it yesterday trending, the people versus Chebukati.
The people versus Chebukati.
That's what I'm saying now. So you wonder, okay, so.
Which people?
Also, I think the other side of Kenya Kwanza also needs to move beyond the precincts of actually feeling like they are the righteous winners, and also play in the public gallery, because what I call this truckload of hope that came in. And as much as we all know that hope is not a strategy, it is a strategy, especially if you plan to cause problems ahead, because people are going to look forward and feel like kind of they're looking up to something. And if it doesn't show up, if people are in the streets celebrating, and then the reason for why they are celebrating is actually withdrawn while they are still celebrating, you've just switched them to the other side. They get into anarchy immediately. Anyway, quick things. The Supreme Court must be the final arbiter in this. That the nation is actually looking up to them. They must rise above the fray. They must choose to be the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. The defenders of this particular republic, when everything else fails, we show up before the judiciary. They must choose that. Because if they then join us into our partisanship, we will not have a republic. Two, everybody who goes to the Supreme Court must come with clean hands. That's why I think Moses Kuria's petition is important. It's been trivialized, but then him that comes to equity must also come with clean hands. So that particular petition must be entertained. It should be given a little bit of a hearing it deserves. Because one time too many people want to show up on the table of justice and say how they've been wronged, but they do not want people to actually speak about the context under which they were wronged. So it is important that this also be put into consideration. Finally, to the rest of us, the whole of us who are Kenyans, 35% of Kenyans who are registered as voters didn't vote. 33% voted for William Ruto. 32% voted for Raila Odinga. There is a whooping almost 40% of others who are not registered as voters. So if you bring in that number, you realize those who didn't vote plus those who are not registered as voters
are the ones who decided this election.
Actually decided this particular election. This election also speaks to the importance of one vote. Just remember that the difference between Uhuru Kenyatta in 2017 and Raila Odinga was 1.4 million votes. In this particular election, it's 233,000 votes. Every vote counts. And the ODM have done their own calculation and they've reduced it to just 441 votes. Just 441, as in ifiki sotano. That is how important your vote is. When a rerun is called, the next time we call you to be part and parcel of public participation in anything, show up for your country. But over and above, we cannot go to war for a people. We have got we have got the Supreme Court. We have got IEBC to decide for this. We cannot do the fighting when we have got soldiers. Just imagine if a country is threatening to fight us, and then KDF calls us to go and fight. KDF says, let us go, send civilians to go there. So let politicians do politics. Let politicians who are aggrieved fight each other and not the rest of us. But we need to move on. The economy needs to surge on. After all, this country is where it is not because of any deliberate leadership in the past, but by
because of the people.
The dint of the people who wake up every morning to go out there and vote. So, or rather, and just work to make our economy work. So the cogs of the economy, the cogs of our commerce are dependent on us going out there and just working. Our land is not necessarily very fertile. We do not have mineral. What we have is human resource. That is what we beat. That's our sharpest end of this particular edge, or rather the edge of the sword in this particular region. We don't have necessarily the best army, not even the biggest. We don't produce so much. It is the human resource. It is you as a person. So while you are there, take care of yourself. Don't consume a lot of fake news. It will make you mad for no apparent reason. Your children are waiting for you. Some of you still have got your children carried in your bags and in your knees. Ensure that they see light of day. Don't be reckless. Let's wait and enjoy the skit that will be there.
I'll say two things that we cannot leave out. Lydia, two things that we cannot leave out. One is a lot of people don't understand the Moses Kuria case. And two, there's an issue that has been raised, that has become of an, and I've also seen Raila raised it yesterday, that William Ruto is killing democracy. He's wrapped up all the parties that were in Azimio. He's taken up to his fold, and he's saying he wants to take us back to the single party democracy. I don't know. What do you make of that? Is William Ruto reversing democracy?
Let me tell you. I mean, I feel tension and headache when I hear Raila Odinga talk about usurpation of democracy, when he denied us an opposition for 5 years. by causing up to the executive to a point that he completely lost his voice, to a point that he was unable to show up for the presidential debate and assert his agenda because he was going to be boxed in and unable to say anything because he had to be afraid of the chair of Azimio. You know, we have created something called Uoga Nation, Bitok. We have created something called Uoga Nation, where nobody can speak. Everybody has been subsumed into a system that we have to be apologizing for, even when mistakes are being made. We have reached a point where our national debt is at such a catastrophic level, you know, a potentially catastrophic level, because all our members of parliament were subsumed into this machinery. Our media was subsumed. Everybody, civil society was subsumed. And so when Raila talks about democracy, he has completely tattered his legacy within the last 5 years because that is how he lost his voice. So I think actually he doesn't have what you would call locus tandai to tell us anything anymore about democracy. And he really does not have moral authority anymore.
But in your opinion, is William Ruto then reversing the...
I don't think so because he has not usurped ODM. He has not usurped all these other parties that like DAPK. They're still there. They have sizable numbers of people that have been elected. What William Ruto is doing is welcoming people who are coming and knocking on his door. Is he supposed to shut it in their face and say, oh, we are so sorry. Sisi kama Kenya Kwanza sasa vile tumeshinda sisi hatutaki watu karibu na sisi. Mkwende huko mkae huko kwenye mliko huko Azimio. Is that how he's supposed to start his presidency? What he has pledged is to keep an open door for an inclusive government. If you want to walk into Kenya Kwanza and work with him, then his hands are open. He's not seeking these people out. And that is something that the Azimio team needs to address. Why are their partners walking out of Azimio and into Kenya Kwanza? Let them not, it's like the proverbial wife who is harassing the mpango wa kando, and it is the husband who has gone and looked for that mpango wa kando. The conversation you should be having is with your husband. So Azimio should be having a conversation with UDM, and they should have had a conversation with PA, and they should have had a conversation with Chap when they left. So people are leaving this relationship because they are disgruntled. Even DAPK hawa walikuwa wanateta wanasema wanatretiwa vibaya ndani ya Azimio. So mimi sioni kama William Ruto should be the one expected to slam the door on people who are seeking to get into Kenya Kwanza. He cannot do that just because even just out of his own leadership philosophy, he has to keep an open door to the presidency that he seeks to establish. Okay, so I think it's too much to expect to tell Ruto that he's the one who is. What they need to do is to exercise leadership on their stakeholders. They should be able to manage their people. Already you saw Jeremiah Kioni threatening Jubilee MPs hata mwezi moja, hata 1 week is not over. He's already threatening them, telling them mujaribu sijui mtu muone na nani, we will chase you out of Jubilee. I beg, you have all of how many MPs? You're already threatening the few that you have. You took a national party and turned it into a little thing that now has I don't know how many MPs, and you're still threatening them. The leadership philosophy of these people is wanting. And so I would not hold it against William Ruto in any way, shape, or form. He has to keep an open door. He wants to establish an inclusive government. Anybody who wants to walk in should be welcomed by him, and that is what he wants to do. Wengine, kama if they cannot keep their people together, too bad.
Yeah. Arnold,
what did you want me to say on that?
You help us. Just maybe if you have anything to weigh in on that, on William Ruto reversing democracy. But then again, I think the most important point is to take us through the William Ruto. The Moses Kuria.
The Moses Kuria petition? The Moses Kuria let me tell you, I agree with Maliba that the Moses Kuria petition is a valid petition. I mean, we were all horrified watching those scenes at Boma. Did you see Esther Passaris pick a grown person, probably somebody's husband, somebody's father, drag him across the floor of Bomas? And then you have people literally just grabbing a gadget out of his hands. And the police are there just watching, as if they're helpless to do anything. Even just leave alone who was who, leave alone who was on which side. Is that decent human behavior? Is that really just something that you can do even just on the streets of Nairobi? that you just go grab a man, drag him along, someone else is pulling gadgets in his hands, even without knowing who those people are, just looking at that scene, it is despicable. Okay? So the people who orchestrated the scenes that we saw at Bomas need to be answerable. And predominantly, they were Azimio actors. Yeah? It was Kina Esther Pasaris that first time. Then it was Kina Olekina that second time. You saw the chief agent of Azimio. Akasimama, he stood on chairs, picked a podium, threw it. Right? What is that? And this was at Bomas. You had diplomats on site. You had international observers on site. And they were acting in a manner likely to suggest that we are in a babu camp, and this is 1917 or something. It was quite appalling. And then you could tell that this was almost engineered to create some kind of cover for certain acts to be carried out. And I think it was very, very unfortunate. And I want to actually acknowledge Kithure Kindiki. Kithure Kindiki was very firm with his team. Yes. Yeah, he was very firm with his team, and even when the passions of the UDA squad were being ignited, he was telling them, "You have to stop, stop yourself, control yourself, sit down right now." And he was able to keep his troops in order. Now on this other side, you have the principal presidential agent. Yeye ndiye amesimama juu ya viti, akirukaruka akirusharusha vitu. It was such an astonishing thing to see. So people like, especially Pasaris, personally, I really had a problem with how she dragged that man. I don't know who that man was. And I have a problem with Olekina and how he almost wanted to physically assault or I don't know what he wanted to do to Chebukati, but it was so appalling to watch and horrifying. So I think the court needs to say something about it. And if you're coming to justice, please come with clean hands. And the same thing I will add. These Azimio people, we also know that they're not the cleanest people in the business. Okay? One of the loopholes that Maraga opened when he said that the process is as important as the outcome, Bitok, let me tell you, is to also give opportunity for political strategists to go planting little landmines along the process so that when the outcome does not favor them, they just detonate. They go back to and poke holes in the process and say, unaona pale kuna shimo, na wao ndio wanadetonate landmines zenye walienda wakiweka. Because for instance, if you tell me that presidential ballot papers in a particular area were more than all the others, in whose favor were those ballots cast? Can you confirm that they were cast for Ruto or they were cast for Raila? Unless Raila got 0 in a particular polling station, those extra ballots might have been cast for either party, isn't it? So how do we know who planted extra ballots here, there, everywhere? You who is burying bodies are likely to be the person able to go and dig out the skeletons, isn't it? Because you know where they're buried. So it's also very important that we also differentiate that sometimes the political strategies that can also be a political strategy, that people go just planting landmines so that they can detonate them when the result does not favor them.
Arnold, I just need to say that the Election Offences Act must count for something. We cannot be in a place where there's a lot of exceptionalism when you approach justice and that you can break the law and get away with. On a light note, nasikia Olekina alipoteza duve yake pale Bomas. So the guys from GSU.
I want to make it very clear that there's someone who has reached out akona rungu yake, lakini sasa the problem is aligonga huyu jamaa akaenda akashonwa, so alisema akona rungu ya Olekina, lakini ako hospitali anataka kwenda kurecord P3.
So whoever has got hiyo duve ya Olekina, please mrudishie. And now that we know mtu mwenye akona rungu yake amrudishie. But then this is the thing. Now getting actually onto a serious issue, DCI must actually get onto action and deal with Olekina and Kanchori for what they did at Bomas. 2, there is also a continuing trend where we are losing electoral officers. We've seen Embakasi East, now we are being told about the Gishuku case and the others. We should not normalize losing officers. Already at the commission level, we are struggling to get talent because we have ostracized anyone who gets to the commission level. And that IBC, if you wanted to kill your career, you go to the commission. So IBC has for the longest time become a career graveyard. It's now turning into a real graveyard where now people going to IBC are dying. In the days of old, you would go to IBC, no one else would want to hire you. And that way, we could not attract talent Because again, the reason I said the other day, if you looked at the four official, the original four OPEC commissioners, you will then realize that that is not the best talent we could have at a strategic commission like IBC. So here we are. DCI needs to expedite, reach out, and get to the root causes on why the returning officer in Embakasi East was killed, why the others are disappearing. There is too much arrest, there is too much threatening. Yesterday, people were trying to actually overrun a hotel that was hosting IBC staff who were coming up with responses to the
petitions.
They have got 9 petitions. They are literally burning the midnight oil. But somebody organizes goons to go and disrupt that. So how are you going to sit down and work and respond effectively if you know that outside are goons? That kind of intimidation is also, they are sabotaging justice. And people need to call that out. I don't know why people are actually quiet.
It's because the media is in on this sham of a situation, so, and it's the worst thing that has happened.
We need to call that out. So for whatever purpose out here, as in for whatever reason, we actually need to call out these guys. And for anything, people are threatening people, and we've turned the election into a circus. We need to actually move away from that. And I think, like I've said earlier on, I think only the Supreme Court can save us from this nonsense, because we are now at a very bad place. If we continue to play around this, we are now on a roller coaster. We don't know where we will be. I know democracy is quite noisy. There is too much dirt and sand and storms in democracy, but we cannot be campaigning from one election to another one. We need to also stop.
By the way, this election was done very well until the elite, the political elite, decided they don't want to accept the voice of the people. And that's where the shenanigans have started. Drama, Bitok, started at Bomas. Did you see any drama in any of the polling stations on election day? No. Other than places like Rongai, where there was an issue and it's just the aspirant who was asking a few questions of the IBC staff, you didn't see drama anywhere. Drama did not happen the second day or the third day or the fourth day. Drama started at Bomas when the tallying was happening. And by that time, the media had already tallied and everybody knew who the winner had been. So the drama started with the political elite. And you can see it is they're starting to now recruit us into this realm. You know, it's a twilight zone where affidavits by people saying that they saw someone hacking is supposed to somehow occupy our minds, and we forget that there is something called a physical Form 34A that was brought by a returning officer. Okay. So this political elite needs to be stopped in their tracks by the Supreme Court, and I hope the Supreme Court will not be recruited into trying to give us a president by elite consensus. We cannot have a president by elite consensus. The president of this country is elected by the people of Kenya. If the Form 34A is not impeached, okay, then the Supreme Court must uphold that win that is on record.
Okay. So,
Moses Kuria?
For Moses Kuria, I think Moses Kuria just wants to put sense. He's actually bringing salt to this particular food that is actually tasteless. We are here asking for justice and crying out foul for injustices committed against us in this particular game. And we are not open enough to also speak about the fouls we committed against other people. It cannot be that only your side of the wrong is what counts. So Chapter 6 must count for something. The Election Offences Act must count for something. And that when you come to equity, you must also come with clean hands. Otherwise, you cannot be a beneficiary. You remember that argument that you cannot kill your mother or your parents and then go before the court of law and tell them
I'm an orphan.
I am an orphan. Have mercy on me because I am now an orphan. You cannot be a beneficiary
of your own
a
crime.
Your own, as in the court of law cannot actually just grant you that. So that is where Moses Kuria's petition actually finds weight and actually alloc us in this particular process. It should not be treated lightly. We should not look away from it, and we should not trivialize it. It's speaking to the same way. That's the same way Azimio feels like their election was actually stolen. It is the same way those who have been injured, hurt through that particular process also feel. So their rights are not necessarily higher than other people's rights.
Absolutely.
So the Article 38 rights are not higher. They are not somehow superior to how I should also be enjoying mine. The other bit of it is that the court also needs to defend people who are serving in IEBC. We now have got guys who have ganged up. The petitions are all ganged up against the person of Chebukati. Who's going to do anything? If we are going to be chasing around public officers, we are intimidating them. They can't do anything. So, is law a suggestion? Do we put law in place and then we turn it into a suggestion? It cannot be a suggestion that if you comply to it and it's against me, then you become an enemy. So Moses Kuria's petition actually could look like it's an outlier, but actually brings to question a lot of these petitions, why they are even here. Moses Kuria's petition is actually asking the question, why are we even here in the first place?
How did we get here?
How did we get here in the first place? So if you're showing up here, also come with clean hands. What did I want to say that I've almost forgotten? I just wanted to talk about, I need to go back to the generation succession bit of it.
As we go. The last submission.
As we go.
That's the last submission.
I have said
I thought
this.
we have closed like 4 times now.
I've said
There's
this
the last ya
before.
mwisho. Unajua nasemanga nikisema ya mwisho.
I have said this
Sasa ya mwisho
before.
kabisa.
We are like preachers.
Mwisho sasa ya ukweli.
Finally, brethren.
Finally.
Yeah, so I need to say this. I want to liken William Ruto to Julius Caesar. I've said this before, even here and on other platforms. You can actually look at the cast. He's almost a silhouette of Julius Caesar. That before him, there was a way, there was an order. And after him, that order, the republic had become an empire and things could not just go back. Even when he had the 3 stabs. It's not necessarily because we want to, we are saying that he's a messiah of sorts. We need to move away from the messiah concept. But this particular season where we are in, we must actually see things for what they are. That before William Ruto, it was impossible for any other person like you and I to win a presidency. I know, and it was even difficult for some people who are dynasties themselves.
To even think, imagine, just imagining.
It was difficult. But for him,
Year-old is the governor of Nairobi. And he's not Kikuyu.
Sakajare.
yeah, so look at it. William Ruto has never lost an election. I want us to draw lessons. I know people are so angry and we are so impassionated. But if you are into leadership elsewhere, you are into management anywhere, you probably are thinking of getting into politics. Probably you need to study William Ruto. There's a reason why people are debriefed when you come from war. So that some assumptions are not left to go on. Some lessons are learned. Before we let you go home, we must debrief you. So for all of us, even as we heal, we've got different ways of healing. Probably it's time we stopped and then studied William Ruto. Because he's never lost an election, right? The last time he lost an election, he was with Raila and he was also with Uhuru. Now they have teamed up to ensure that he on his own, for the first time, he's made his first attempt at the presidency and he won. For the young people out there who are looking at the Republic, we are going into Kenya 5.0. For those guys who are looking at 6.0, for those of us who want to look at the future of Kenya, specifically around Article 43, how you frame the issues. You know, if William Ruto had actually played in Raila's way of doing politics, the Tibim, Tialala, the sloganeering else, and how Raila would have beaten Ruto blue-black. But Ruto pulled him away from that particular arena, created up a particular way of doing politics that Raila is not used to. And that is how he scrunched through, even though Raila was backed up with everything except the Azimio Secretariat and the leadership in Azimio. Everything and everybody wanted Raila to win. Even Raila wanted to win, except the Azimio leadership. Those people just didn't want Raila to win. And I need to say this, Raila does not run for presidency so that he goes to court. It is not, Raila he doesn't put his name on the ballot so that lawyers can go to court and look brilliant there and speak big English and Latin. Raila runs so that he can capture power and administer state. That is what Raila has been trying to do for the last 5 times he's run. But the people he's walked along this journey with have been people who only hang on his coat for their own end. So that they win seats, so that they go to court and appear brilliant. So as in, we are not going to be at a place where we must actually not keep on conflating issues. There's a lot of mixing up here. Raila does not run to create jurisprudence. That really needs to be talked to his voters out there so that people heal properly.
Okay.
That he has been trying to run and capture states. But the people he works with, they are here now speaking very good English. They will be showing up in gowns, black ones, na nywele ya kondo, so that they speak a lot of everywhere. That is not why Raila runs.
Thank you.
Now that we are at this point, we must start speaking people into accepting a post-Raila era.
All right.
That, I know Bitoki don't want to hear that, but we must tell our people out there that the best tool we had could not hack it in this particular battle. Can we start sharpening another knife? Can we start thinking about an era without Raila? He's done his best. No one can deny him being a statesman, right? He's done his bit. But will you answer the question? Meshach is here talking about that lack of agents should not make anyone steal your election. But is there any reason, even one in hell, why they didn't have agents? Is there any reason why they didn't have a tallying center? Is there any reason why they didn't do proper Go TV, get out the vote? Is there any reason why they didn't just manage stakeholders properly? What is this reason?
Maswali.
There's none.
Okay. If you are from Azimio and you've had Arnold, then you have to answer that question. Someone said yesterday that Raila is good for jurisprudence. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Lydia, for coming in.
Thank you so much, Bito, for having me.
Thanks for always coming in as well. And thanks for the viewers who have stuck with us again this morning. Until tomorrow on the Siasa Wednesday, we'll say bye-bye. But before you go, we still want to remind you that we're giving you an opportunity to start off your content career and giving you 1 month trial period to use our studios. Mwezi moja. We want to see, I would like to see more people realizing their dreams. No dream should die. Every dream should get an opportunity to come alive. So if you have always had this beautiful idea, or you want to do content, you don't have to be perfect, but you have to have a will to start. Then we're giving you an opportunity to start off. You can call in the number on the screen, 077-767-115, talk to Steve, book your appointment. Then you come in, we have a conversation, and we see how you can start off. This is a tackle, and it ends now. Bye-bye.